Many years ago, I wrote a group of poems, and one of them was, "Are you a mask or are you a mirror? Do you reflect or do you really believe you shimmer? In other words, do you think the light comes from you or you are a reflection of the light?" And this is an understanding that all of us have to become cognizant of. We need to realize that everything is His, everything is God's, and we are reflections of that being. We are that which has within us His qualities and His essence, but it doesn't belong to us. We aren't the owners of it. We are merely holding on to this for a period of time. It's on loan to us. We act as if it's all ours because our senses are slaves to the world. And we think that we own the world because we can take things, and we have laws that provide ownership. We have laws that create ownership. So it's normal that we begin to think in terms of mine and yours. In reality, everything is His. In Arabic, they use the word abd, which means slave, when someone has a name that's holy often. For instance, Abdullah, which means the slave of God, or Abdul Rahman, which means the slave of mercy. Well, what we really are the abds of the senses. We're the slaves of our senses. We're tied to our senses. We're tied to our relationship to the world. And being tied to that relationship to the world leaves us with really a limited source of emotional situations. Being involved in the world either leads to what we consider joy or what we consider pain. Bawa, when he describes these, calls them two braids of hair that we have to actually braid together because we need to be able to neutralize them before the barber comes and cuts these hairs, before the pain and the joy is cut from us by the passage of time. And that's what's going to happen to our pain and joy. We have joy until we begin to be involved in the world more. And then the tumultuous nature of existence takes our joy away because we're constantly in some sort of conflict or in some sort of attempt to resolve more and more things. And the same thing happens with pain. You have your pain, and then you get involved in something else and you forget about that. We move on from one thing to the next. We're in constant turmoil, in constant agitation, in constant back and forth between one thing and the next in this world. We don't reach a state of peace. We don't reach a state of contentment. We don't reach a state of attachment. And it's only when we begin to reach a state of peace and a state of attachment and a state of contentment that we are able to escape from being a slave to the senses. As long as we have not reached repose, contentment, as long as we haven't reached peace, we will be in constant turmoil. And we tend to accept this state of turmoil as our natural state because we don't know anything else. We don't know that we don't have to be in this state all the time. And what's the solution to this? What's the answer to this? We have to learn how to detach from our sensual involvement in the world. Now, it's very difficult to do this, especially when you're younger, because we're looking to experience everything. We're looking to be involved with everything. We're looking to get everything that we can. We're in our aggressive consumer phase. We're in our aggressive getting phase. Over time, this passes, and there are things that happen to us individually. When is enough enough? When have we gone through so much turmoil that we become tired of turmoil? When have we gone through so many traumas in our existence that we get tired of trauma? When do we get to a point where we settle down and begin to understand the true nature of reality and the true place of our existence within reality? Once we can reach a state of contentment, then we can begin to understand what's real and what's not real. Once we reach a state of contentment, we can see clearly the difference between what's right and wrong. When we're in pursuit of the world, right and wrong take a back seat to acquisition. Our acquisition becomes more important than what's right and wrong. And so our goal-oriented lust becomes more important than what's right and what's wrong. And it's not until we truly begin to understand right and wrong that we can be within a state that moves forward and allows wisdom to rise within us. Wisdom is like a light. Wisdom is a light that shows us our way through the darkness. Wisdom is a light that does away with confusion. Wisdom is a light that can guide you through times of difficulty and through times of turmoil. It puts things in perspective for you, where when you're blinded by avarice and need, perspective is lost and again takes a back seat to what you are chasing. Fear comes into play. When you're in the dark, you don't know what's coming at you. You don't know where you're going. You don't know what's around the bend because you can't see. The Indians in America, the Native Americans, had one tribe had an initiation process for its young men where they would take them and blindfold them and put them out into the forest. And they had to spend the night in the forest. And you can imagine the fear that went through the young man who was being initiated. He couldn't see. Every sound that he heard became frightening. Every rustle of the wind became frightening because he had no idea what was going on. And he had to spend the entire night out there. Finally, when the dawn came, the elders would come back out to get him, and they took his blindfold off. And what he would see, as soon as the blindfold was removed, that just a few feet from him was his father, who was sitting with him throughout the entire night to make sure that nothing happened to him. Well, when we can get to the point of contentment and of realization and of true certitude, then we know that our Father, God, is with us through all of our difficulties and all of our trials and tribulations. But to get to that point, we have to be at a point where we know the difference between right and wrong, where we do what's right out of conviction, where we know the difference between our desires and our true needs, where we know the difference between Allah's qualities and the qualities of the world. It's very easy for us to understand the qualities of the world. And it's very easy for us to understand sensual pleasure. But to go to the next level, to transcend our worldly delights, to transcend our worldly difficulties, and to detach from them is another level in existence. And somehow we, each of us, has to reach that level. We have to reach that level where we detach ourselves and where what goes on around us doesn't become the driving force in our existence. Some people have to turn on the news to understand how they feel that day. Some people have to turn on the news to find out if things are good in their life or if things are difficult in their life. Imagine, you need to turn on your television or your radio to find out what's going on with you. And this is the commonality among humanity. Everybody turns it on. Everybody looks to see how they're doing. Can we make the shift where the news doesn't tell us about ourselves, but we're in touch with ourselves enough to know and to understand what state we're in and what the state that we want to be in is? Can we relax into that? Can we relax into an internal state that isn't affected by all of the externalities around us, by all of the pushes and pulls, by all of the magnetisms, by all of the glitters that go on around us? When will we stop being affected by everything around us and find our true self internally inside ourselves? When will our outward eyes turn inwards so that we can see the truth that is within ourselves? We all know, and we're all incredibly cognizant of the fact that this life is a temporary situation, that we're here for a time, and that time has a limit. We tend to forget that. We tend to lose touch with that. And we tend to lose touch with the fact that since we are in the process of traveling through this life into the next life, we not only have to prepare for our journey in this life, we have to prepare for our journey in the life to come. It's as if you were taking a trip and you were going, let's say, to Scandinavia and to Florida. And the weather in Scandinavia was going to be freezing, and the weather in Florida was going to be very hot. And you had one suitcase. Well, some of the suitcase better be for light clothes, and some of the suitcase better be for heavy clothes. Well, like that, we have to provide a home for ourselves in this world. We have to provide shelter for ourselves in this world, but we also have to provide for shelter for ourselves in the next world. And what is the shelter that we can take into the next world? What is it that we can provide for ourselves in the next world? What is it that we can take with us into the next world? You know, there's a saying, you can't take it with you. Well, it's true. You can't take anything elemental with you. However, you can take things that are non-elemental with you. You can take the qualities that are non-elemental, that belong to God, with you. You can crystallize within yourself God's qualities. You can become God-like within your own being. Saints take on these qualities. Ketubs have these qualities. Prophets have these qualities. The archetype of man, when creation occurred, had these qualities. We are meant to become that archetype and have these qualities. And these qualities create a home within us for the next phase of existence. And the next phase of existence is the passageway towards our Creator, the trip towards our Creator, traveling towards our Creator, going into the world of non-form. And what is the point of our journey? The point of our journey is to come in contact, to enter, and to merge with reality. But as long as we are not real, as long as we are still subject to illusion and delusion, and subject to the nature of illusion, our journey can't move forward. We become stuck in the illusory world. We become stuck within illusion. We can't move out of it. When we detach from illusion, then reality has space to enter into us. That reality is already in us, but it is crowded in such a way that it's suppressed within us and we're not cognizant of it. And we can only become cognizant of it when we release our attachment to illusion, when we release our desire for illusion, when we release our love for illusion. Our love will take us to the place that we want to go. Our love is our intention. Our intention is what we worship. So think about that. Our intention ends up being what we worship. So if our intention is wealth, we worship wealth. If our intention is power, we worship power. If our intention is lust, we worship lust. If our intention is mercy, we worship mercy. If our intention is compassion, we worship compassion. If our intention is justice, we worship justice. But our intention creates our path and creates our worship. It creates the way we look at things. It creates where we put our energy. It creates where and how we give our obeisance. And we either give it to the world or we give it to God. And how do we come to the place where we actually worship God as opposed to worshiping the world? How do we come to that place of certitude when we know that He is here with us and He is everywhere we go and He never abandons us? How do we come to that place of certitude? The path is slow, and the results of the path are not always visible to us. And this is where faith comes in. We have been sent holy books, we have been sent holy men, and these men come into our lives to give us the certitude that we, even though we cannot see certain things, can still believe. And we can believe through their guidance, through the guidance of the books, and through the guidance of the holy men that tell us that we can continue to believe and show us the way to believe through their actions, through the way they live. So the example of all of the ones who came before us, who have lived appropriately, who have become true man, are the examples for our lives. And we have to take on these examples and, in the beginning, try and imitate them. And as we become more comfortable with it, we become more comfortable in understanding truth. It's very difficult for us to let go of what we can see and hear and touch and smell. It's very difficult for us to say all of these things aren't real. But if the light of wisdom comes with us, then we can see clearly that these things aren't real. We can see that all of the people who have lived within this world have gone from this world. and this world was not able to sustain anyone. Everybody left it. So if we truly understand that there is no sustenance within the world, we should be able to take the next step, that we have to find the place where there is true sustenance, where we are able to be maintained. And if we look clearly with his light, we can see that within the truth of him are the real treasures in existence, and the only things in existence that give sustenance. So by looking towards his qualities, by looking towards mercy, by looking towards compassion, by being able to give of ourselves to others and to lose sight of our own self through giving of ourselves to others, we get insight into reality. We get insight into knowing the truth of existence. And it's very easy to stay outside of the truth and live a normative life within this world, because this world doesn't expect you to enter into the truth. This world doesn't expect you to know reality. All this world expects you to do is follow its rules. And its rules are different all over the world. In some places, the rules are based on a theocracy, based on religious ideas. But these rules, when they are based on a theocracy, are all external. Do you look a certain way? Do you act a certain way? Do you pray a certain way? Do you go to certain religious institutions? In other places, religion is illegal. So you have to conform to a non-religious ethic. You have to conform to an ethic that tells you utopia is available on earth. There are so many different ways to look at and interpret the world, but our purpose is to stop trying to interpret the world, but to find a way that we can leave the world and find the truth. And we can only leave the world when we reach a place of contentment within our being. When contentment comes, wisdom can rise. But until contentment comes, you are struggling with all of the things that are keeping you from being content. So if we think we need more of this, we can't become content until we get it. And more of what? Whatever it is your personal inclination is, your personal intention is. And that's different for each and every one of us. Our intentions are different. Our inclinations are different. There are millions and millions and millions of intentions and inclinations in this world. Some people need PhDs. Some people need businesses. Some people need jobs. Some people need husbands or wives, and they can't get to a place where they can stop until their internal need is fulfilled. In many places in the world, people don't get married until they have a certain amount of money and a certain amount of things, until they can buy a home and furnish a home. In other places, people just get married and move in with their parents. There's all different societal ideas about what's appropriate for you before you can move forward. But we need to be able to escape from society. We need to escape from the cultural norms that tell us what it is we have to do. We have to go to a place outside of them. Sufism is a danger to Orthodox religion. Why? Because within Orthodoxy, there are rules and there are regulations, and a lot of what goes on has to do with form and committing to form. There was a dervish whose name was Ali Baba, and Ali Baba didn't go to the mosque that often. He did other things. And a bunch of his friends came up to him and said, Ali Baba, we don't see you at the mosque. And he said, I know where I am. And he said, why do you care? He said, well, we're one of your brothers, and we want to make sure that you're taken care of. And for you to be taken care of, you need to be in the mosque. That way, there's no problems for you. He said, oh, really? Well, if you want to take care of me, I have a really big bill at the grocer and the butcher. Why don't you go take care of those for me also? And they stopped bothering Ali Baba. The point is that externally, everybody's going to have an idea of what you should be doing, where you should be going, and how you should be carrying on your life. And these ideas mostly are because this is the way they do things. And everyone thinks the way they do things is the way everybody should do things. But we know that in truth, we have to find a way out of all of this. We have to find a way out of the trap of the world. We have to find a way to escape from the everyday goings on in the world. We have to find a place that's separate from it. And it was quite a miraculous thing to watch the sheikh who lived in the world but was not of the world. He was here with us, but he wasn't with us in the same way that we were in the world. He was here and not here simultaneously. The things of this world didn't interest him. And whenever there was a problem, he would always say, it's because somebody brought the world into this place. And that's what happens. If you take the problems of the world and bring them into your life, they become your problems. And we need to understand this clearly. The world's problems are not our problems. The government's problems are not our problems. We are individuals who have the ability to be free of all of the worldly dilemmas, all of the worldly situations, and all of the worldly traumas. The Buddha went into the woods. Bawa lived in the woods for years. The woods are a quiet place where the problems of the world can't reach. Can we find a place within our lives where the problems of the world can't reach, where we become untouchable by all of the dilemmas and all of the conflicts that are stirring all around us? Can we find a place where we can live in peace? Wisdom can take us to that place. And wisdom is a true perspective on existence. And we need perspective on existence. We need to see our existence from a higher plane as opposed to being caught in the middle of it. As they say, you can't see the forest for the trees. And if all we see is trees, we'll never understand the breadth of existence. If all we see is the world, we'll never understand the breadth of existence. But if we can contemplate the fact that there are angels and the fact that there are Satans and the fact that there is another realm beyond this realm where Allah exists without form, we can begin to understand that there's more to this existence than meets the eye. And we have to begin to truly believe that. And when that belief conviction becomes incredibly strong in us, when that certitude is in us that God is with us all the time, our life begins to change. Our life becomes easier. Our life becomes different. Our life becomes relaxed. And the burdens of this world begin to fall from us. When we can give up the fact that we do everything and understand that in truth, Allah does everything, we relieve the pressure that's been on us all our life to carry all of the burdens of the world on our back. We change. We become at peace. We become content. And when we are in this state of being content, that's when the truth will rise in us. And we have to ask Allah for help in doing this. We have to say to Allah directly, we need to know you. We need to know the truth. Open up our hearts so that we can see your nature and understand reality. Open up our hearts so that we can know the truth, so that we can know you. We know everything that we do here is temporary. We know that there is no sustenance from what we gather in this world. So instead of gathering worldly things, Allah, let us gather your qualities. Let us gather your qualities, bring them into ourselves, integrate them into our being, and become unto you. And then we can travel on the straight path, the path of truth. And may that happen for each and every one of us. May that be our intention. And may we worship that intention to know Allah, that intention to be with Allah, that intention to be taken from this world into reality. Ameen, ameen. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.